All right, class. Sergio Silva Jr. here for week 5 discussion board. We're covering option 1 for this week, and as for the previous weeks, I will be linking all of the references on the bottom of the video. So the topic in question now is benzodiazepines, and particularly its relationship with suicide risk and how that would affect clinical decisions, and just kind of the thought process and the game plan in terms of treatment planning with medication-assisted therapy. So getting into benzos in general, benzodiazepines, they're generally used for sleep disorders, anxiety, affective disorders, delirium, alcohol withdrawal, um, some aggressive and violent behaviors that can occur with psychosis, or other psychotic disorders. And let's kind of break down a little bit of what benzodiazepines, how they function, their mechanisms of function in the system. So they primarily work with GABA receptors. Um, so so backtracking a little bit, for GABA is a gamma aminobutyric butyric acid. That's an amino acid neurotransmitter, and that is actually synthesized from another amino acid neurotransmitter called glutamate. And there are two types of different GABA receptors. Not super important to get into those right now, but essentially, GABA A receptor reduces the amount of negatively charged chlorine ions in the cell, whereas GABA B receptor increases the amount of positively charged potassium. And benzodiazepines actually work very, very similarly to GABA A. And what they essentially do is they bind to these neurons and they open up these channels and allow a flooding of these negatively charged chlorine ions to go into the cell. And what that does, that hyperpolarizes the cell. That moves the cell completely away from the chance of an action potential. And so it inhibits any sort of neuronal communication. It basically stops it. And so when you see this at a big, large systemic level, you end up just kind of, calming the system down, which is why it's used as a sedative, and kind of just a calming drug in general. So that's a little bit about the neural mechanisms there. Let's see, it generally functions almost the same in most matured brains. This is generally the GABA's role. And let's see, moving on here. Um, so the issue here with this this drug that works so incredibly well is that there's an argument in the community that it might increase risk of suicide, and which which is an enormous epidemic right now in general. 1 million people die by suicide each and every year. It's the second leading cause of death. And so there have been some studies, one that was actually linked that I'll be using, and I'll reference it down below. That was the study that was used for option 1. They essentially tried to link in a bunch of individuals in Sweden to see if there was any correlation between a large group of individuals who died by suicide and what prescriptions they were on, and so on and so forth. And essentially, fast forwarding the entire study, they found a pretty significant correlation to um, a prescription for benzodiazepines and a higher suicide risk or completion of suicide. And there are definitely some things to control in this study. There was um, indication bias, and that essentially means that there could be different things that are difficult to control for the causes of the anxiety, the causes or the reasons for the prescription in the first place. And it's my takeaway from this study is that we really are in another one of those, like, hands up in the air, um, the situations. There aren't that many clinical implications here, save for really just following the guidelines, not overusing, not using it for longer than you should be using it. Um, and my biggest clinical takeaway is to assess for previous suicidal behavior and any sort of risk factors at all, suicidal behavior or previous suicide attempts being a risk factor, of course, for suicidal um, behavior or tendencies. And so really kind of assessing for that, and if that is present in one of your patients or one of your clients, considering an alternative outside of benzodiazepines might be a much safer and a much more ethical bet for your client. All right, thanks for watching.